what that means is if you think of the word interfere,
Hmm.
right, it's putting fear into their experience. And so
Hmm.
being aware of that. When we're excavating from their subconscious,
Yeah.
what these kind of the landlines that were laid to protect them.
Right.
I think
Mm-hmm.
for me, the distortion that I'm not enough and I'm not capable, if we
Right.
really realize who we are,
Yeah.
we would never play. And so if we can
Right.
embrace the situations that are painful and just keep looking for, oh, what is the inspired action that's going to come through me today?
Mm.
And of course, this is how spirit works. Of course, right next to me is happens to be the decision maker for that.
Of course. Yeah.
I think it's human nature to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Masterpiece Cafe. In this segment, I'm talking to Vicki Sattva. She's a psychotherapist who's done graduate training and studied spirituality for over 3 decades. She shares her experience of her life unfolding in intuitive ways and how she has created so much positive momentum in the world. Vicki is currently an international speaker and a coach for people to follow their own spiritual journey. She's a licensed psychotherapist, and her traditional graduate training with her spiritual understanding of the human path adds depth to this conversation. Always following her passions, Vicki has journeyed along an intuition driven path for creating so much in the world. Some of her past creations include a wellness center, a program for HIV plus teen mothers, a long term residential program for homeless teen mothers, a sustainable bag company for Earth Day, and a writer producer of a travel show. She is devoted to creating lasting ripples of positive impact in the world. And this is why I love our conversation so much. She drops truth bombs throughout this session on what is meaningful in change, what spirituality means. And I can't wait for you to experience her quiet and meaningful power. Here she is in a Masterpiece Cafe conversation, unveiling the truths that have become the heart of her life. And I hope that this inspires you in your journey to build your masterpiece.
What would the next 3 years look like for you, and how would it unfold?
Okay. So, what I see is my health as the foundation for everything else. So, I would continue on my optimal health journey and really finding a way to um, defy aging and really consider a new paradigm for that, that my body is an instrument of healing and I need that vessel to be able to go around and make the ripple of impact that I want in the world. So the first thing in 3 years is I would have this state of optimal wellness, and I'm definitely entrenched on that path now. And so I imagine continuing to do what I'm doing and then like learning other biohacking techniques,
Mhm.
things that come of how would you say it, like current new healing modalities and learn those. So I'm always searching for ways to be that better version of myself. So first and foremost, it would be my health,
Mm.
continuing to be optimally well. So I'm currently a psycho-spiritual therapist. I'm a licensed therapist in private practice, and I've been doing that for consistently for over a decade. But I've had my license for 2 decades.
Oh.
And as part of that, I have had many different jobs in between that, and I'm happy to share that with you if you'd like. But to answer your question, I would continue to offer the psycho-spiritual counseling and be a guide to others And my philosophy is really helping them empower themselves to live their fullest potential and
Mhm.
helping them uncover what that is and see what their soul's contribution is to the world.
Yeah.
The new things that I would be doing is a podcast and completing the writing of 3 books, and doing some more speaking engagements at this retreat center that I've become affiliated with.
Sounds beautiful. So I know you've done through your previous work, you did a lot of mind, body, and spirit training and understanding and through your therapy. So I'm wondering for you, what is this untapped or unspoken desire that you have to contribute that you haven't yet leaned into?
Well, I feel I actually have leaned into it, and it's been a well inside of me that I've tapped in my whole life from like being a little child where I would go around and create like community neighborhood cleanups and help the kid at school who was picked on. And so I think it's my nature. When I see a need, I have to meet it. So in my life up until now, I'm 55, I would see a need. For example, I had worked at the University of Miami at a HIV positive teen
Right.
program, and I saw the need, and I then created a comprehensive wraparound program for them so they could truly support their children in a way that they felt empowered. So unfortunately, they found out that that they had HIV while they found out they were pregnant, and their teens and their inner city moms, right? So just imagine all the obstacles that they had to overcome.
Yeah.
And so, like in that example, I created a store for them to be able to buy, quote unquote, their supplies for their babies through donations, which enabled them to feel not just like getting a handout and feeling less than, but feeling competent and earning that stuff through action, whether it was attending school or attending their appointments. So the need from that, I realized, is that I was returning them home to their drug-infested neighborhoods with really dysfunctional, traumatic people operating from a traumatic brain. So what I did then is I created a residential program for teen mothers,
Mm.
right? So I can't help myself. If I see a need, I have to do my best to be inspired to create something to meet that need. So I feel that I have been doing that my whole life, and I just keep playing and continuing to follow my heart and follow my inspiration.
What would you say? I love that story because, there's so many people that get those inspirations, they get those ideas, and they have the ability to act through on something, but then they hesitate. They don't do that. They don't lean into that intuition. What would you say if you could say to anyone that has those moments but hasn't followed through on that and leaning into what I consider to be a masterpiece, which is we're painting our works of art in our life and just following those intuitive nudges and taking action on them?
Well, I would let them know that we all have childhood conditioning that interferes with them experiencing and living a life from their potential. And so what that means is if you think of the word interfere,
Mhm.
right, it's putting fear into their experience. And
Mhm.
so when we have that interference,
Right.
we, for multiple reasons, like we could do a whole, hour on just the reasons why adults don't achieve what they've come here to do. But usually it's based on some common core beliefs of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I
Yeah.
am not safe, and I'm bad. So what I would encourage them to do is to do their shadow work so they can be truly free. And what that means is like really just kind of exploring what are the distortions that they picked up from childhood that kept them safe in childhood that is no longer
Yeah.
um, serving them now and becoming aware of them. So really excavating from their subconscious
Yeah.
what these kind of the landlines that were laid to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can excavate them and look at them and process them, then they're the master of those distortions instead of those distortions being the master of them. So I
Yeah.
think without doing the work, there's really no quick fix that's like, oh, just push through it. And no, like there's
Yeah.
going to be a saboteur that's really going to interfere with that person. Really, what's the right word? Living their soul's contribution.
Right. And what were some of the challenges that you felt yourself as you went through this? And you have such an interesting journey. Tell me, how you overcame some of those things and was able to lean into the magic that unfolded for you.
Well, so there's magic and then there's still work, right? So I don't think it's ever like you arrive at a place where it's effortless manifestation.
Right.
I think for me, the distortion that I'm not enough and I'm not capable
Right.
was the thing that kept me kind of like putting my own glass ceiling over me. People would see in me things that I couldn't see myself, and that was the feedback I'd be getting, but I wouldn't trust them. Because in my childhood, I kind of have a different childhood in the fact that I had parents giving me no negative feedback. And so I actually didn't know if I could trust my own opinion of myself or
Right.
others'
Right.
opinions. So what I realized is by doing the work, like I am a personal development junkie. And this is what I
Me
recommend to
too.
everybody.
Yeah.
Read the books, pursue your shadow work, go to counseling, get a coach to look at what obstacles are no longer needing to be there,
Yeah.
and realize that it's a journey. But every leg of the journey, you're more and more free, and you're more and more able to access your truth and your highest potential.
Yeah, that's such good advice because, personal growth allows us to tap into knowing ourselves and knowing what we want and also what things get in the way of what we want allows us to face our fear with a lot more certainty. And one of the things I argue in my book about Masterpiece is that there is no certainty. And so once we embrace that, we can truly be the architects of our lives. And what we do is we spend a lot of time, trying to pretend that there is certainty in certain things. I have a certainty in my confidence here or my skill set here. And it takes us away from the spiritual nudges that we actually get to follow our heart that ends up leading to really magical things. Just like I read about the Gaia bag where you where you had this experience, right? And you said, you know what, there must be a solution. And you created a whole solution out of that was really it felt like a nudge when I'm reading your story. Could you tell us more about that and that moment? And
I actually believe everything is a nudge from spirit. I believe that we have an ideal timeline that we are intended to be on.
yeah,
And what happens is through the childhood conditioning, we leave that original timeline that we wanted to have, and we're not living the life we intended to be. If we really realize who we are,
yeah,
we would never play it small.
right.
So like I said earlier, when I see a need, my brain, and it's really, my brain starts thinking how to resolve it. And then what that does is then trigger
Yeah,
my soul to come up with an inspired action, right? But it is through the pain
yeah,
that motivates that. And so if we can embrace the situations that are painful and just keep looking for, oh, what is the inspired action that's going to come through me?
mm,
Right? It's powerful, right? So at the Gaia bag, I was at the grocery store and had two young kids, and I had just learned about this swirling vortex of oil out in the Pacific, and I was so disheartened by what I learned about plastic and how it lives for like 1,500 years and it's so toxic. And so when the cashier asked me paper or plastic, because that was the question at the time, I froze and I knew I couldn't. So I left without my groceries in a bag. And I went home and I went to my kids' school. And this whole idea came to me that night, which was to have them be stewards of the earth and not sell popcorn or chocolate at a low profit and instead really get 100% return on investment by selling these bags to their family and friends.
Right.
And that model actually wound up, of course, expanding, right? So
Mm.
1 year later, was 1 year? It was 6 months later, I was on a playground telling a mom about this who happened to be the head of environmental education for Palm Beach County schools. And she loved it. And I wound up doing it for the whole county, that the
Wow.
kids sold the bags. And then also, I was part of a mastermind because I always feel that people should have accountability groups and opportunities to grow. And that mastermind, I was challenged to take that concept of the bag and sell it. And I walked into the local Whole Foods and just asked what they were doing for Earth Day. And of course, this is how spirit works. Of course, right next to me happens to be the decision maker for that.
Of course. Yeah.
And so, they said, well, here's Lauren. And I said, I'd love to talk to you about Earth Day for that one store. But this is how it works.
Yeah.
If it's good and if it's important and if it evolves humanity, the doors fly open.
They do.
So Whole Foods in Florida had decided not to just do it for that one store, but to do it for all the stores in Florida that were
Mhm. Mm.
So I think it's following the inspired action
Mhm.
that
Yes.
comes from the pain point that you're experiencing.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you talked about when you have a nudge that actually involves other people, that is about something the universe actually wants to happen, and that it benefits the entire planet, that the people you need to meet, the circumstances that allow things to unfold just blows the doors wide open. And I've had that happen so many times in my life that, and I truly believe that we're all connected, that we're all energy and we're all interconnected. And
Mhm.
when that inspired action is taken, it sends a ripple through the entire network, of the quantum field, of source, of God, what you believe spiritually, and that then allows for these things, these magical moments to happen. But without bold aligned action or inspired action, you can't get there, because you need to have that show that you're going to take action on that. You can't just think about it in order for that to unfold. So I love the story that you've told here, because it aligns with my experience in my life, with so many synchronicities of things I couldn't possibly imagine. The right person sitting next to me, like you said, or a circumstance opening up that allowed it to have a bigger impact. So I'm I'm really curious for you, what does spirituality mean? And when did you know, like internally, did that grab you? And did you really feel like you understood it? Because I've been my whole life trying to get a better understanding. It's always evolving. But there was a moment in which I felt like I saw more of it and understood more of it embodied within myself. And I'm curious what that moment was for you.
So I've had a few. Okay. So there was in my early 20s, I would be turned on to books like the Celestine Prophecy. So that was kind of a great intro because it's more of an adventure book, but it has the thread of that there's something greater.
Yeah.
And then in my 20s, I was in personal development path, which is very parallel to the spiritual path, but I was not on that. I didn't have a faith in something greater than myself. And then even when I was 33 when I had a child, and on that hospital registration, I wrote atheist.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And I was
it's,
that for many years myself because I wasn't sure how I could define what spirituality actually was for me. So I can relate to that.
yeah, yeah. And so what happened, I believe Spirit brought in a little Zen teacher called my baby that really woke me up to a truths that I was unaware of. And I couldn't deny them because they were coming from her. And the skeptic in me probably needed that to
Right.
happen that way for me to believe that. And then once I started studying the Eastern and Western texts and about spirituality, I just got deeper and deeper into it, and my appetite was insatiable. It resonated with me. It was like the floodgate opened, like I awakened to this higher truth and I wanted everything. And then within like a few, I would say, years, and all these miracle things were happening. Like I had a Kundalini opening, I had channeling coming through me since 2018, that which was um, the way I can describe it is I have my finite mind and I know it's up there, and that's knowledge that I've learned. But
Yeah.
what was coming to me was infinite
Mm.
intelligence. It was beyond what I knew.
Yeah.
So I would say that that is what defines spirituality to me is
Mm.
the, the awareness that there's something greater than me. That thing greater than me, at its core, is love.
Mm. Mhm.
We are this whole experience that we see here is part of the divine,
Yeah.
and it's a great um, theater for us to evolve.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's this place in which we can grow and evolve and contribute and give back from love. So how does that pan out now in the next 3 years of your masterpiece of you coming from love and the spirituality and these experiences you've had? Now I know that the thing that excites you the most is empowering people to live their fullest life. And how do you use that, this knowledge, this moment that you just described that's so beautifully articulated in your work now with people?
Well, I had to unlearn a lot of what I learned in grad school in psychology, and I as I learned on my own personal path, I then taught what I learned. And that study was modern day and old text on universal laws, from Eckhart Tolle's work to the
Right.
Kabbalah to um, the Bhagavad Gita, the Course in Miracles. So the the awareness that I am a source for
Mm.
sources expansion allows me to empower others to see that. So in these 3 years, as I've recently done more shadow work, and I see that my contribution of having a broader uh, audience is what wants to be experienced through me,
Yeah.
then I see more speaking engagements, the completion of my books, the podcasts, And none of that feels like work.
Mm.
And I really haven't worked a day in my life, Sherry, because I've only done what brings me
Yeah,
joy.
me
And, I've done many different things by just following my joy, including be a travel TV producer, right?
too.
So it's just this, following the path and being willing to take the risks, even if it creates a full switch in your life.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that following the path and be able to embrace that. What do you think after working with people for so many years on mind, body, and spirit is the biggest obstacle that they face other than what we've already talked about in terms of embracing their dark side and working on that? What's kind of the biggest obstacle that you run into over and over again for them to embrace their unlimitedness and lean into their masterpiece and really be a positive force in the world?
I think it's human nature to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Mm,
And personal development, as in a general category, has growing pains.
yeah.
And there's a real selective numbing
Mm,
that people are caught up in. And I think that is the mindless activities that we're doing that are keeping us distracted. And I am concerned that many will not live their soul's contribution
yeah.
because they're distracted. And um, I think it takes unfortunately, a wake up call, a health crisis, a relationship breakup, a financial job loss, something to shake people up at this point,
Mm,
because it is through the pain that we desire change.
yes.
And um, I think that's the biggest obstacle is this numbing of the collective.
Right. Wow, that was beautifully articulated. And I can agree with that 100%. In my work, I use finitism, i.e., the end of our lives, to bring forth more of our spiritual journey, that we only have 4,000 weeks. And it's based on the idea that we have 52 weeks a year, that if we live to be 100, we have 4,000 weeks in our lives. So I have people go through an exercise where we calculate how many weeks you have left, because we go through life sort of pretending like we have more time than we really do. It's this distraction of, oh, we have all the time in the world. That thing that's pulling from my heart, that thing that's getting communicated to me from source, that thing that would contribute to the world, I'll do that next year, or I'll do that next month. I'll do that when I have these resources. And we go through this exercise, and what I find is that the finitism helps people actually tap into that they only have so many weeks here, and that the goal here is for growth and for transcendence and for evolution. And if that's all the weeks I have, why would I wait a month or a week or a year to do those things that are pulling on my heart? Why wouldn't I do it now? And it's a passion of mine. Have you used this finitism, or just looking at our lives from a very different lens, to stimulate people to embrace their calling, their purpose here, which would make the planet a better place for all of us, obviously?
Mhm. It's beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
I've done a couple exercises that resonate with me that we are talking about, and I love that exercise. One of them is writing their eulogy,
Mm-hmm.
of how they want to be remembered and
Right.
what is their legacy. Um, what was the other one? What is the story I want my child to tell me, to
Mm-hmm.
tell about me? What is the story I want my child to tell about me if they're parents, if they're not just some significant other? What is the story I want them to tell?
Right.
And it's not going to be that I numbed and sat in front of the TV every evening and had these dreams, but didn't feel good enough to do them. And so I just continued to exist. And,
Right.
so I think those are two great exercises because, shame, it's interesting. Shame is is the biggest motivator. I look at the Catholic Church, right? It used
Yeah.
shame to be able to, rule a whole culture of people.
Yeah.
Um, and so, what we won't do for ourselves,
Yeah.
do to save face with others.
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
So, we wouldn't want to feel ashamed about the life that we had, this precious gift that we wasted.
Right.
So, even having somebody else write your eulogy, like, what would you want your child to write about you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Could be a really good tool.
That's a beautiful tool. Do you use that in your work in helping people with Lifebook? I also work in Lifebook and, mapping out a vision for every category of your life. Do you end up using that while you're working with people in manifesting and leaning into their ideal life as well?
Absolutely. And, I have kind of two hats. So there was a time when I was really enthusiastic with Lifebook because I had done it myself and I saw how transformative it was. And like I was sharing with you before, the the right brain, the yang quality, the yin quality of me, is someone who attracts really cool things into her life, right? And but the yang was not developed. Like I
Mm,
always see in Lifebook gave the infrastructure, the bookends, the clearly laid out roadmap for you to achieve
right.
what you're wanting in all 12 categories of your life. So for me, prior to Lifebook, it was haphazard.
Mm,
There were some cool things that I did in life,
right.
but it wasn't consistent.
Mm,
And what Lifebook gave me was the consistency, right? So the things that I could do, like the things that I could do, like be on the Mind Valley stage, that actually wound up that was a very yin
yeah.
um, quality because I had not done anything to make that happen, even though it was in my life book.
Yeah.
What made that was just somehow that order got to the universe without any contrast.
Right.
So I got a call, out of nowhere to go speak at Mind Valley that summer.
Right. Right.
But there's other categories in life, like the character category,
Yeah.
like the finance category, like the health category, the relationship category, the parenting category, that all needed to have me do a deep dive and really understand what I wanted, understand what beliefs I have around that category. That's the premise, what my vision is, why I want it, and the strategies. And I had to work that on an ongoing basis. So
Yeah.
when I saw the power of Lifebook bringing both the masculine and feminine attributes together,
Mm,
I insisted on all of my clients doing Lifebook to the point where in September of 2019, I literally closed my practice and opened it the next day. And I only opened it to the people that would be willing to do Lifebook that
mm,
were my current clients.
mm.
So
I love
through
that.
that line, because I see the power of it. If you don't have a clear vision for all those categories for what you're wanting, you're wasting your time and my time.
Yep.
And what I also see is sometimes I have to not be as rigid with that and meet people where they're at.
Of course.
Sometimes they're so stuck in their childhood trauma
Mm.
that they need some healing of that before they can even create a vision. So I'm a little bit more in the flow around that now.
That's beautiful. I know we're past the 5 questions, but something you just said was so intriguing, and that's just meeting people where they are. Do you have time for 1 or 2 more questions? And that they might be so stuck in their childhood trauma. And this is another This is another passion of mine. I came from a home that was troubled. I was an only child, and I spent a lot of my youth working through a lot of the trauma that I experienced as a child. And so when you said that, it piqued my interest as well, because you can have the framework and you can, but you can also be stuck in this trauma. What is, if you're willing to share, like, what is for your work with meeting people where they are, what is the key that you've found in working with them and allowing them to move forward through that trauma?
Well, there's multiple keys that can be unlocked, right? And so I I work more with the mind,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not a somatic therapist.
Right.
For me, it's looking at the perspective that they have, the distortions that they have. It's really understanding that we have to look at their current life, see where they're struggling, and trace that back to the childhood conditioning where those agreements were made.
Right.
So at some point, that child made agreement, for example, to give their power away to their parent to secure love,
Mm.
to get their needs met,
Yeah.
right? So these children working with the adults who have these childhood wishes
Yeah.
that were not met, right? And working with that inner child
Right.
to have the current day adult client be the sacred parent for that child.
Mm.
And so knowing that they don't need to look outside of themselves
Right.
to get that need met. They don't need to find that in a partner. However, that's what they're programmed to do.
Right.
But really giving them the opportunity to reclaim their power
Mm.
and parent themselves.
Yes. Mm. With one foot in the now and one foot in the past, and rewiring that tangle. Yes. Is
Yeah.
what I think of it as for me, it was rewiring all those tangled, going back to that source moment and rewiring those what felt like tangles in my own mind, and conflicting beliefs and impressions about what I was doing. That's beautiful. So if you could say that the ripples that you want to create in the world, the ripples that are tied to a source that's bigger than you and tied to all of us. And you could say, what is that ripple that I would like to be present in the world after I'm able to contribute? A little bit of you looking forward and saying, when I can't contribute anymore, what would be those ripples that you would like to leave behind for humanity?
Mm. What's coming to me is a visual, so I will share that, and hopefully that will answer your question. Um, so I see that the truth of who we are is this eternal light. Okay,
Mm.
so if you picture a lantern, right? So this light is ever glowing, and it's glowing inside a structure called Vickie Sherry, right? And the structure has glass around it and frame,
Right.
right? And as life happens, as this light glows, soot forms on the glass. And that soot is the whether you call it the delusion of who you are, the distortions of who you are, it is not who you are. Who you truly are is the light inside that lantern, pure, ideal, perfection. And so the ripple of impact that I want them to experience is to not identify with the soot, nor even the glass structure. The glass structure is a temporary vessel that we're in, and it has a personality, which is fun to have. And yet, can we lead life from that personality with the light coming through us and not identifying with that shadow?
Right.
when we identify the shadow, we don't get to live the life we came here to live. We're living a life that is off the timeline. It's suffering. It's not what we imagined. And even to be in this form,
Mm.
we we have no idea once we get here how much it took to create this form around us. There's an advanced ancient technology that's, spirit that has created this miracle to be in the time space reality in physical form. And if we can move to that deep reverence for that and focus on the light that we are and just play in this experience,
Mhm.
then we lived a life well lived.
I love that. That was beautiful. I hope that that will be in your books that you are writing because that is very inspiring. And I truly believe that we all have lights, that we are a light. And wow, so inspiring to talk to you today. I really appreciate your time and also the insights that I've had in this and having this conversation with you and just sharing it with the world. They've listened to this, they feel really inspired, they want to work with you, they want to follow your work. How do they best reach you?
My website is a great
Okay.
resource. It's
Okay.
vickysattva.com and Sattva is Sattva. And I
Okay.
also have, I'm Vicki Sattva on Instagram.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah, I recommend it for everyone. This has been a wonderful conversation. I look forward to us having another one in a short amount of time.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Well, bye.
Hey everyone. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you want to learn more about Vicky's work, you can follow the links that were presented in the bio here to go to her place where she is creating, writing, serving people, and speaking. And you can connect with Vicky on LinkedIn, and I'll put and drop in some of her connection points. She's writing multiple books that should be released in the next couple of years. I can't wait to read them.